tear gas, water cannons, and trenches dug up on the outskirts of the national capital of India. Not for some overseas invaders, but for peacefully protesting farmers from Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh. These farmers are protesting against the new farm bill passed in September this year. They are unhappy with this new legislation and call it a sellout of the interest of the farmers to bolster the pockets of corporates. The farmers have been arguing to increase the minimum support price for years now. Exposing them to the corporate world will become a massive challenge for the hard-working farmers. Good afternoon. What we are here discussing today is the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill that really has changed a lot of things in India when it comes to agriculture. Today, we're going to follow the story. We're going to take you on a little journey of what's happening on the ground with the protest, but beyond the protest. There is a genuine challenge of how farming happens in India. Why do farmers stay on the edges of poverty? And what they're protesting about, because that's the more important question. There are barely any farmers that you can find, maybe a few industrial ones, who've made a living out of it, who've been able to, get past the basics. But most farmers work very long days, work very hard, and barely can make ends meet. So what we are here to discuss today is how does this all unfold? What happens? Joining me on the show today is Jessica Taneja, the executive director of Democracy News Live as well. Welcome her on the show. So we are both going to be, interchanging and bringing you perspectives. We'd also be having a few conversations because Jessica and me both have seen a tremendous amount of, angst with the farmers. And so we will both be taking this. But first, we're going to start the show today. We're going to go all the way to Bangalore, where our correspondent, Kishan Nayam, is at site. Kishan Nayam is in Bangalore, where the protests are happening. Kishan, tell me what is happening on the ground in Bangalore. Who are these? Are these farmers protesting?
Sir, basically organization Namura Bhumiga Namagilla, along with Ayata Horata, has been protesting about this new Amendment Act, Land Reforms Amendment Act, since July. Now they have come here to Bangalore in solidarity with the farmers' protest that is going on throughout the country. We have various organizations who have come together to protest and show their concerns with respect to the new Land Reforms Act, which they believe, if continues, then it would lead to industrialization of the agricultural land. We have Miss Santosh over here from Namura Bhumika Namagilla to discuss about the details of what is exactly happening and what are they protesting about.
Okay. All right. Why don't we bring her on? Tell me a bit about Rajani. You are the
Yeah,
member of the Namarabhumi Namagirali. Explain to me, why is it important to
yeah.
sit down there for
So
this
Namura
protest? What's
Bhumi
happening on the ground?
Namura Bhumi Namagirali is a people's movement. We have various organizations who work with small farmers from multiple years, activists trying to promote organic agriculture, making agriculture viable to small landholders, mainly women, Dalits, the poorer farmers who have been working relentlessly, got together when we saw this bill amendment being tabled back in the month of January 2020, and then COVID happened, and we were quite shocked to see that the Karnataka government followed the ordinance route to push it without any debate without waiting for the session in the monsoon. So we were on the streets in monsoon also, but then I think the National 3 Farm Bill Act took more of media space. In fact, we're in solidarity with that. The Karnataka government is doing the APMC Act amendment to go in line with the centre. Being a BJP government here, I have amended our Act as well as the Electricity Act. And if we look at it in totality, the Karnataka Land Reforms Amendment 2020, which is today being also going to be passed anytime now in the upper house of the Karnataka Assembly, is going to be literally the destruction of farming community in Karnataka, because we have been noticing that land holding is increasingly
So I
agriculture,
think
or people who are corporates themselves,
where
who wish to convert
so
the
let
land
me let
and
me
do
come
more
let me
other non-agriculture.
let's focus one thing at a time. What you are protesting against is primarily the farm bill today, and you're protesting against the corporatization you possibly think is going to happen with farmland. And that, I think, is one of the bigger challenges around this country. Just to bring viewers up an update, in Tamil Nadu, also the DMK led opposition has also hit the streets now. Earlier, this started around Delhi when the encirclement of Delhi began to happen by farmers in Rajasthan and Punjab coming together, and then the UP farmers also joined. You have to remember that India's capital, New Delhi, is surrounded by multiple states. Punjab does not directly touch Delhi, but it's joined through Haryana. So these farmers all have come from different directions, but two governments around Delhi, one is Haryana and the other one is Uttar Pradesh, are both BJP governments. So enough effort was made to suppress the protest there, but they've still not been able to handle it. And now what we see is the farmers in UP as well as Haryana, have all come together as well. There is a group of farmers which have come together, I should say. Wouldn't say all farmers. So now the protest is spreading across the country. Karnataka is also a BJP state. Now, let me also tell you, there has been this ordinance route which was taken for this farm bill, but it has also been taken for other bills which the government wanted to force in. Now, the ordinance stays in place for a few months, which means you don't need a discussion before you go to parliament and have a discussion around it, which means they can push in an ordinance, they can play around it for 6 months, and then they have the numbers both in the upper house and lower house, and they can go and push any bill they want. But they avoid the whole discussion around it. So at least in the start. This route has been taken before. Now, let me go back to Karnataka, where we have with us uh, uh, Rajini Santosh. We are also going to be joined by GT Ramaswamy, she's the State Vice President of Karnataka Right Sangha. Rajini, explain to me the one thing that you're demanding today from the government of India and obviously the government of Karnataka.
That all the amendments and the farm bills that have been brought in the COVID time without discussions, like you highlighted, to be withdrawn
We,
immediately.
your audio is very poor. The background sound is too loud. I know we'll have to come back to you. Let's go to Jessica. Jessica, you've been seeing a lot of the challenges around around Delhi, and there has been a lot of Twitter chatter around it as well. There are a lot of people which are standing with the farmers, and there are a lot of people who are standing against the farmers at many levels. They're talking about these farmers being Khalistanis, for one, which has been made as a statement. There has been other people who are talking about why are these farmers eating chicken and mutton on the street and biryani. The whole slant obviously is talk about them eating biryani because biryani is associated with Muslims. When the people of India begin seeing that they are maybe part of as they describe, as a terrorist group attaching themselves to this farm bill, they will discredit the farmers. But then we saw a Punjab farmer's son who was killed in Kashmir fighting on the front lines, a 22-year-old. So there is a lot of chitter
Absolutely.
chatter. What I think the idea is to discredit the farmers by attaching them to a Khalistan terrorist movement which existed in the late 80s. And that in itself takes away from the idea of how this is going to unfold. Explain to me, when you've been hearing about this and when you've been talking to people on the ground, what's your perspective on this?
Well, there have been different ways to derail the whole farmers' protest and the movement that they have brought forward from Punjab to New Delhi, Rohit. In fact, when you speak to most of the farmers, they say the idea of Khalistan doesn't matter to us anymore. We're fighting here for the new farm bills that have been brought in without any clarification, without any discussion with us. We're the primary stakeholders. Nobody spoke to us. if you would have taken us into confidence, at least there would have been a confidence building measure from the government and shown some support to the farmers, which is not given to them. And of course, when you don't want to talk about information and news, like there have been 6 rounds of discussion with the government officials that the so commissions have had, farmer commission heads have had, but there has been no conclusion, no solution so far. Today, the sixth round of talks will, the seventh round of talks will happen, but the officials say, the BJP officials say that they're unlikely to take the laws back. There's only so much room for some improvisation, but not much can be done. So we don't know when the agitation will end. Also, people falsely fabricating stories about this will end or there'll be violence, and various such implications have been made. But nothing we've seen in the national capital so far. The farmers very categorically said that we're protesting from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Je-
and we let people go to offices. There will be
Jessica,
services available.
Jessica, let me intervene here. There has been some new developments in this story, and I
Sure.
think this is getting very serious. Uh, Arvind Kejriwal, the Chief Minister of Delhi, has been put under house arrest. This is what AAP is saying, alleging, and what is unfolding is quite unprecedented, I would say. Andhra Pradesh, the left parties, SFI, launched protests in Vishakhapatnam's bank shut down early. Earlier, the bankers had said they will not shut down, but they are in support of the farmers. Gujarat police has also detained some Congress party workers because obviously one of the main opposition is coming from the Congress party. And Chief Minister Rajinder Singh was the one who was leading the Punjab farmers and had come to meet the Home Minister as well. So the Congress has been very involved in it. There have been some people who have been missing in these protests. There are a lot of Congress workers in Rajasthan, for example, Sachin Pilot, and maybe there are a couple of others who I can name who've been sitting on the fence. They're wondering whether they'll come to the BJP at some stage or not. So they are not openly speaking about it because they don't know which side to sit on, whether to sit on the opposition side and support the farmers or to go and sit in BJP's lap. So I think those are the challenges that they're facing. So they're not being able to completely openly come and talk about it. But obviously, the Congress Party and the CPI and many other parties like the DMK are the ones who are, standing and saying, we will stand with the farmers in this case. We believe that this farm bill is anti-farmers, it's pro-corporates, and that is been one of the challenges. Javadekar, India's Information and Broadcasting Minister, he went out and said that what we are proposing today is what Congress had in its manifesto. So what is it protesting about? It's a perspective. We should take a look at it. If this is what Congress meant when they proposed it in the manifesto, there have been certain ideas that the Congress did talk about, removing the intermediary in the mandis, what you call them. These are these wholesale markets where a group of informal lenders sit and they kind of run the economy of the agriculture business. They basically lend money to the farmers, they buy back from the farmers, so they have this control going on. But farmers, what they are saying today is minimum support price is what has supported them so far. What they got as a minimum support price is not what they can get at the farm, at the wholesale markets otherwise. So the minimum support price and providing wheat, rice, sometimes lentils, sugarcane is what supported them, and they're sure that as they move forward, they can actually purchase materials for next year's produce or the next season's produce. So I think that has been the challenge here. And what we are seeing today is happening on the field is that we are seeing a lot of the farmer groups slowly come up. Now, this can become very big. Let me tell our viewers around the world, once farmers decide that this bill is against them, then they make up about 60% of India's population. About 60-70% of it lives in rural India today. And if they decide to stop activity beyond the pandemic, where India is already suffering in terms of numbers, this will hit India. Year and a half of protest, one protest or the other, but whether it was a CAA protest, which is a bill which is aimed at determining who is Indian and who is not, then there are other things that have come up. Jessica, when you look at the last year and a half and you look at this farmer protest today, explain to me, do you see some kind of a journey towards this farmer bill? Did you expect this was going to come this early? And did you think India will still again take the ordinance route for pushing a bill through?
Well, Rohit, India has been attempting to regain its democratic processes, at least through citizens. I don't know how much the government would want to ensure that at this point in time, because any time there has been protest in the national capital, it's only been met with, tear gas or, pushing protesters away with water cannons, and all force possible has been used on them. Well, the farmers were protesting back in September and July as well in their own homeland, but nobody heard them. So that is why once these ordinances were passed, and that is where they took matters in their own hands, and they said, "We come to the national capital." Even when they reached the national capital, they were not allowed to enter. Trenches were dug up again. Water cannons were used on them. Tear gas was used on them. The BSF was called into the national capital of Delhi. You and I both had witnessed on the Ghaziabad border or to New Delhi that there were forces there to welcome the peaceful protesting farmers. So, of course, the farmers have taken it in a rather peaceful way, trying to face all the horrible treatment they could possibly get for demanding their rights. But we need to look at what this is going to achieve for them. What do they have in mind? What do they demand? Now, the demand is that they don't want the government to give them some sort of relief. They want these laws to be taken back altogether.
Sure.
So
Sure.
this is a
So,
very, very, very difficult negotiation for the farmers and the government to go ahead with, and the agitation will continue till the time this is not resolved.
Jessica, let me invite Rinal Dabas, an organic farmer. Rinal, let me bring you on the show here. Tell us, when you see these farmers protesting, do you think this protest that they're doing is even valid, or do you think these are just opposition parties who've gotten together and are pushing farmers to do this protest, or are there is a reason for them to be protesting?
Hi, good afternoon to everyone who's watching Rohit Gandhi's show. So, first of all, protest, peaceful protest is always valid. The thing is, when it turns violent, then the direction goes bad. What the farmers are saying is, once you pass the law, you should have taken like each farmer body into loop. You pass the ordinance, and technically you are bypassing all the democratic system. आपने ordinance pass कर दिया, और you're not like inviting the parliament session, which the farmer is like the farmer body, they are asking for now कि आप एक filter session इसको बुलाइए. Then what I feel, there is a trust deficit between farmers and government. The redressal mechanism, which Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Service Act 2020, which said all the disputes can be resolved only by sub-divisional magistrate, which is practically not possible. He's already having so much of work. Can he actually like wane into all these disputes and everything? And by that, the Supreme Court in Nandan Biometric versus Ambika Devi case, it categorically said a farmer can avail Consumer Protection Act 1986 if he feels that he is being cheated or there has been some wrong in the contract farming. So first of all, there is this trust deficit need to be resolved to actually like calm down the process. Then we talk about like the APMC mandis, like they are bad, there's cartel in it, and there's so much of like they're regulated. We are talking about regulated markets. We are not talking about free markets, which the government is trying to bring in. Because the free market model is being like they've been imported from the foreign countries, from US, from France, and they have failed there itself. We have been seeing continuous farmer protests in France, in USA, because the motive of like corporatizing the agriculture is just profit. But what about the environmental and other socio-economic factors which goes into account? So what
Mrinal, you bring in the idea of foreign countries import. I was with an ambassador of a country who was posted into India. It was one from Central Asia. She told me that we cannot take away Indian produce, even rice, to our countries, because the amount of chemicals that are laced in the product are unusable in Europe. They are not even allowed. So the quality of farming that India is delivering is a poor product. What has happened is over the years, India has subsidized fertilizers. It's not subsidized or it's not basically rewarded, if you want to call it, soil quality. And that in itself has been a very, very sad part. So beyond, you obviously are into organic farming. Beyond perfect farming, there are multiple challenges around it. India's agriculture structure has failed. Through the Green Revolution, India may have produced a lot of crop, but the quality of crop that India has produced is poor. And we've seen that through. Mrinal, I'm going to bring in another guest here just now. It's G.T. Ramaswamy, the state vice president of the Karnataka Right Sangha. Mr. Ramaswamy, if you can hear me, can you please come in and tell us what is that you really are protesting? What do you want the government to change as soon as possible? If you're there on the frame, Mr. Ramaswamy.
हेलो बोलिए।
Yes. Mr. रामास्वामी, बताइए आप क्या प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, आप क्या चाहते हैं सरकार वापस क्या करे?
हम इंग्लिश में बोलना है, हिंदी में बोलना है?
जिसमें आप बोलना चाहें सर, जिसमें भी आप बोलना चाहें, इंग्लिश और हिंदी, whatever you want.
ओके। देख, अभी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ये सुग्रीवाद ने ये पास किया है ऑर्डिनेंस। वो ऑर्डिनेंस वो जब कर्नाटका का असेंबली चल रहा था उस वक्त ऑर्डिनेंस लाने का कोई जरूरत नहीं है। उस वक्त मोदी साहब ने बहुत किया है और किसानों को दबाने के लिए बहुत ही कोशिश कर रहा है। अदानी और अंबानी को बहुत ये कर रहा है। इन लोगों ने अदानी अंबानियों को हेल्प करने के लिए किसानों को दबा रहा है। वो लैंड रिफॉर्म है और एपीएमसी का सब्जेक्ट स्टेट का है, फिर भी वो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ये करके उसके ऊपर भी एक ऑर्डिनेंस पास किया है। और एसेंशियल कमोडिटी एक्ट, ये तीनों किसानों के लिए बहुत ही मारक है, इसलिए इसको वापस ही लेना है। वापस नहीं लेने से हमारा प्रोटेस्ट है, हमारा ये है ना, और भी सीवियर हो जाएगा। और दूसरा, ये इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्राइवेटाइज करने जा रहा है और अभी रेलवे प्राइवेटाइज किया है, तो अदानी को रेलवे दिया है, 6 अदानी को दिया है। जो भी गवर्नमेंट सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट अंडरटेकिंग है वो पूरे अदानी अंबानी को सौंप रहा है। उसके बाद ये किसानों को दबाने के लिए ये तीनों ऑर्डिनेंस ला के, जिसके मुताबिक एक आदमी 216 एकड़ तक परचेज कर सकता है। ये किसान को उतना परचेज करने के लिए उसके पास ये नहीं है। किसान लोग कोई भी 216 एकड़ तक परचेज नहीं कर सकते। फिर भी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने वो ऑर्डिनेंस लाया है। उसके बाद एपीएमसी में कुछ ये है प्रॉब्लम्स है, वो प्रॉब्लम्स को उसको रिमूव करके वही तो किसानों को हेल्प करने के लिए
क्या
हर एक एपीएमसी।
मिस्टर रामास्वामी, एपीएमसी में आपको पुराना प्रॉब्लम क्या, एपीएमसी में क्या प्रॉब्लम था, थोड़ा बताइए, जो आप चाहते हैं कि एपीएमसी का वो जो प्रॉब्लम्स को ठीक करा जाए।
ये एपीएमसी में क्या है, एपीएमसी जो दलाल लोग हैं उन लोग रेगुलर बिल इशू नहीं करते। वो क्या करते हैं, खाली व्हाइट स्लिप में ये डाल के देते हैं। बिल राइज करने से बिल में जो एपीएमसी सेस है और दूसरा कमीशन है, वो पूरे जो परचेज करने वाला है उसके ऊपर डालना है। उसको तो उसके ऊपर नहीं डाल रहा है। अभी क्या वो व्हाइट स्लिप में वो किसानों से वसूली कर रहा है, वो गलत है। उसको रेगुलरली बिल राइज करने के लिए इंसिस्ट करना है। और दूसरा, एपीएमसी स्टाफ को कंट्रोल करना है। एपीएमसी स्टाफ दलालों के साथ मिलके किसानों को बहुत ये कर रहा है, धोखा दे रहा है। इसलिए एपीएमसी को फर्स्ट ठीक करना है। एपीएमसी को हटाने का जरूरत नहीं है। एपीएमसी में जो भी ये है प्रॉब्लम्स है उसको रिमूव करना है।
It is a very good point. I want to, Mr. Ramaswamy, let me explain to the audience what you're saying. It's a very important point you're making. What Mr. Ramaswamy, he's in Karnataka right now. He's saying, first of all, the ordinance was brought in. The ordinance shouldn't have been brought in. It should have been, the session was happening. They should have actually let it go through. The second point he's making is that Adanis and Ambanis are the ones who are benefiting. Now, when I was in Punjab, I heard the same argument from a lot of people. All the Reliance stores had been shut down. They were protesting against the government of India. But again, I've heard this over and over again. It is something to consider for the audience. It's, for the audience to know these are farmers who are protesting, who are talking about it, and the audience is smart enough to understand what's going on the ground because they see what's happening on the ground. The third thing he's saying is APMCs may not have been a perfect place for sorting this out. APMCs had issues. There was a lot of corruption happening there. Again, hand in glove with the government. It's not as if government was blind to this, but it certainly feeds the local politicians. It feeds the local bureaucrats. Instead of removing the APMCs and bringing in a larger company to handle all of this now in the back end, they have removed the APMCs. So these bodies are saying, don't remove the APMCs, fix the issue that's there. It's organized markets, spend tens and thousands of crores of public money to create these markets. Organize them properly. Any incoming inventory needs to be, properly listed. A bill needs to be issued, but somebody who buys has to pay the tax and not the farmer. So I think there are good points to be made. What my challenge is as I look at it, is I don't know why the discussion and why the debate didn't happen in Parliament, why it didn't happen in different, constituencies and different small bodies where farmers' representation should have been taken, they should have been heard well, should have put out a list. There is no need to hurry. In a democracy, sometimes a hurry is a bad thing. And what we don't need to see is that hurry. Now, let me bring in Jessica here back again. Jessica, would you like to, ask Mr. Ramaswamy some questions?
I think what Mr. Ramaswamy had said earlier about the role of APMC and others pretty much clarifies it all for us. But what I would like to understand from Mr. Ramaswamy is, Mr. Ramaswamy, if you can hear me.
Go for it, Jessica.
Okay, I think he can hear me. So, Mr. Ramaswamy, हम आपसे ये समझना चाहेंगे कि जो आपका प्रोटेस्ट है, जो आपका रीजन है, काफी लोग इस रीजन को समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं, तो आप अपना रीजन उनको समझाइए, क्योंकि यहाँ पे काफी सारे एलिमेंट्स हैं जो कह रहे हैं कि आपका मोटिव मतलब कुछ और है इस प्रोटेस्ट से, आप जो स्ट्रीट्स पर उतरे हैं, तो आप हमारे ऑडियंसेस और व्यूअर्स को बताइए कि आप आखिर प्रोटेस्ट कर क्यों रहे हैं और आप क्या चाहते हैं।
देखिए, अभी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने 3 ऑर्डिनेंस लाया है। एक लैंड रिफॉर्म एक्ट है, ये दूसरा आपका एसेंशियल कमोडिटी एक्ट है, और तीसरा इसका एपीएमसी का। इसके ऊपर ऑर्डिनेंस जो ले आ रहा है, किसानों के साथ कंसल्ट भी नहीं कर रहा है, किसानों का क्या प्रॉब्लम है वो भी नहीं पूछ रहा है। और दूसरा, ये लैंड रिफॉर्म एक्ट के मुताबिक एक आदमी 216 एकर्स परचेज कर सकता है, 216 एकर्स रख सकता है। उतना लैंड है ये किसान परचेज नहीं कर सकते। ये जो भी पैसे वाला है उन लोग परचेज कर सकता है उसको। और दूसरा, एपीएमसी में
जी
बोलिए, बोलिए।
मैं आपसे ये जानना चाह रही थी कि आज 6 राउंड ऑफ टॉक्स होने वाले हैं गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स के साथ। गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स ने इंडिकेट किया है कि हम ये लॉज नहीं हटाने वाले, हम ये ऑर्डिनेंसेस वापस नहीं लेने वाले, तो आगे क्या होगा? फिर आगे फार्मर्स क्या करेंगे?
किसान मरेगा, और दूसरा ये हमारा जो भी प्रोटेस्ट है ये और भी सीरियस हो जाएगा, और ये दूसरा इंडिपेंडेंस का वार हो जाएगा। हम लोग गली गली में जाके मरेंगे, गली गली में ये करेंगे। मोदी उसका खुद का राज बनाना है। मोदी जी इतना झूठ बोल रहा है, ये इतना झूठ। ये अभी पहला बोला था तो स्वामीनाथन आयोग का ये इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे करके लास्ट इलेक्शन में। अभी वो बोलते अभी पार्लियामेंट को ये दे दिया, अफिडेविट दे दिया, हम इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं कर सकते ऐसा करके। ये झूठ नहीं है क्या? ये मोदी जी झूठ नहीं बोल रहा क्या? ये देखिए। और दूसरा ऑर्डिनेंस का हो गया, और एसेंशियल कमोडिटी एक्ट में अमेंडमेंट कर रहा है। एसेंशियल कमोडिटी एक्ट अमेंडमेंट करने से कोई भी एक आदमी कितना भी माल खरीद सकता है, वो माल को होल्ड कर सकता है। वो यू विल क्रिएट आर्टिफिशियल स्केर्सिटी इन द मार्केट। ये फिर बाद में 100 रुपये का माल 300 में बेचेगा। तब तक ये छोटे मोटे जो व्यापारी लोग हैं वो भी मारा जाएगा, किसान भी मारा जाएगा। अभी देखिए रिलायंस इसमें ये किसानों से 16 ये गेहूं परचेज किया है 16 रुपये में, अभी 40 रुपये में बेच रहा है। ये किसको फायदा हो रहा है? किसान को फायदा हो रहा है कि नहीं तो कंज्यूमर को फायदा हो रहा ना? वो नहीं हो रहा है, तो बीच में मिडिलमैन को फायदा हो रहा है। ये दिस इज द थिंग। और
let me
दूसरा
let me bring. Go ahead,
इलेक्ट्रिसिटी।
What do you? You've already made the point on electricity, Mr. Ramaswamy. Let me bring in our correspondent Kishan Nayanam, who is in Bangalore. He is also going to bring on Syed Mehboob, member Praja Horata Samiti. Explain to me, Kishan, what's happening there on the ground, and explain what Syed's role is.
So basically, this protest has been organized by two organizations together. One of which is Horata Samiti, Ekya Horata Samiti. Their work, their ideology basically is it is a consortium of various organizations who are working for labor, child welfare, farmer welfare, and all sorts of human rights. We have Mr. Syed Mehboob from Praja Horata Samiti, who is handling the farmers' protest with the other organizations in Bangalore. I am introducing Mr. Syed Mehboob to you.
Great. So what I want to ask Mr. Syed Mehboob is what's the challenge there?
Hello.
We understood from the other people there on the panel who are talking about it. Mr. Syed Mehboob, explain to me, is there something that you need to see changed? What do you want to see changed with the central government and your state government? What is that they've done which is so anti-farmers?
Sir, there is no change. Both are same. The central government and the state government are also doing the same job. From there is no benefit for the farmers. Totally, it is against the farmer.
Is when the central government and Mr. Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, appeals to people and saying, we've done this for the farmers, the income of the farmers is going to go up. These political parties, opposition, are really playing with the farmers. How do you respond? What do you want to say?
There is no chance to political party to play. Here the main thing is they are playing with the farmers. The rules they are bringing to adopt the farmers, it is what you call for the perishable, for the other commodities, it is against the farmers. Once you sell the property or sell something to from the farmers, if anybody purchase, anybody sell the agreement, once a law is there, if he has given agreement to from the farmers for rupees, what you call, he is purchasing the somebody, that center mediator who is purchasing fruits or perishable or this one grains or rice, the agreement is there. There agreement from before it is come, the product before it comes, there is one agreement. So that agreement, it is affect the farmers, not this one what you call not in favor of farmers. Once he is signed for the agreement for rupees 6, 7, 10 like that, if the commodities what they were given, they have to produce what about 10 tons, 12 tons, 50 tons. If in between that they come, they have to purchase from others and they have to fulfill the commodities. There is another
Sir,
thing is there. If नहीं नहीं मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, ये जो अब कानून लाए हैं, ये जो किसान के फेवर में है बोल के, किसान के फेवर में किसी हालत से नहीं है. किसान के फेवर में कैसा आ जाए, एक बार माल लाने से पहले, प्रोड्यूस करने से पहले उसको अग्रीमेंट करना पड़ेगा. वो भी उसकी जमीन है, उसकी वो चाहे बिकाएगा. अब वही उसकी जमीन, किसान की जमीन मैं लेके मैं उसको तो आलू वो पिकाता है गेहूं या कोई बैंगन पकाता है, कोई टमाटर पिकाता है, वो उसकी जगह उसको मालूम है. ये अग्रीमेंट करेंगे, वो अग्रीमेंट करने के बाद वो बोलेंगे ये बना, और 6 महीने आने से पहले आप बोलोगे उसको इतना बोल के जब पाएगी तो किसान कहां से लाके देगा. और इनकी कमोडिटीज पूरी होने के बाद ना हो तो वो परचेस करके किसान देना पड़ेगा. वही बात है अभी हमारे दोस्त ने बताया, देखा है.
I think Rohit, there's an audio issue here.
पंजाब से
There is a network issue on that end. Bring in Renal Dabas. Renal, you've heard what the farmers are talking about. Explain to me, when you're an organic farmer on the ground, when you see what's unfolding, do you feel for the farmers? Do you feel that the farmers are being treated poorly here? I'm sorry, Mrinal, you're mute. Either you have to unmute yourself or you have to unmute. Yeah, sorry. So my question to you is, Mrinal, do you think the farmers are being poorly treated here?
Absolutely. And I'm so sorry, मैं हिंदी में ही बात करना चाहूँगा.
जी जी हाँ, हिंदी में बताइए. आपको क्या लगता है कि जो हमारे फार्मर हैं, हमारे किसान हैं, उनको ठीक ट्रीटमेंट नहीं दिया जा रहा?
जी, और मैं बिल्कुल एग्री करता हूँ रामास्वामी जी से, जो उन्होंने पॉइंट्स रखे कि कहाँ पे जगह मिलेगी, कैसे वो बेचेंगे. एंड सबसे बड़ी बात है कि अगर फार्मर्स को आप बाहर प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स दे देते हैं तो वेयर इज द चेक एंड बैलेंस. उन पे चेक एंड बैलेंस कौन रखेगा कि आज अडानी ने या रिलायंस ने इतने रेट का खरीदा है. अब मंडी में आते हैं, एपीएमसी की हमारी बात हुई, मंडी की बात हुई, तो उस पर काफी चेक एंड बैलेंस होते हैं. कौन बेच रहा है, कितना बेच रहा है, तो फार्मर हैज अ राइट कि नहीं इसने गलत बेचा है, और उस पर एक एक्शन लिया जाता है. तो और यहाँ पे जो दूसरी बात आ रही है कि वी हैव टू सिक्योर द फार्मर्स इनकम. ये जो एमएसपी होता है, दैट्स अ सिक्योरिटी कि फार्मर उस चीज को उगाए एंड ही नोज कि 6 महीने बाद उसको उस क्रॉप का दाम मिलेगा. या प्रिसाइजली वही चीज हो रही है कि जो ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट की मैंने बात करी थी, जो फार्मर है उसके बहुत ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट है कि मुझे 6 महीने बाद ये रेट नहीं मिलेगा. और इसी से अगर हम इनकम की बात करें तो आई विश टॉक अबाउट कि क्रॉप डाइवर्सिफिकेशन करनी चाहिए. फार्मर्स को ये सिखाना चाहिए कि मार्केट में क्या ट्रेंड चल रहा है, क्या उसको मशरूम की खेती से फायदा हो रहा है, क्या नेचुरल फार्मिंग से फायदा हो रहा है, क्या ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग से फायदा हो रहा है. ये चीजें उसको सिखानी चाहिए. And here we are talking about eliminating the middleman. The talk is not about eliminating the middleman. The talk is about providing the infrastructure, जो कि सरकार अपने अभी तक नहीं कर पाई. I'm not talking about बीजेपी, I'm not talking about कांग्रेस, बट वो अभी तक नहीं कर पाई है. कि हमारी मैं दिल्ली के किसान को रिप्रेजेंट करता हूँ. दिल्ली में डीटीसी बसेस चलती हैं, तो व्हाई नॉट खेत से लेके आप मंडी तक की एक बस चला दें. व्हाई नॉट कि उसको खेत के बाहर से उसका सामान उठ जाए. एंड हेयर जो हमारे कॉरेस्पॉन्डेंट ने बात करी कि हमें मंडियों को स्ट्रॉन्ग करना है, उनमें चेंजेस लाने हैं, रादर देन उन्हें बिल्कुल ही डाइल्यूट कर दिया जाए और हटा दिया जाए. सो दिस आई फील द वॉलेंट प्रोटेस्ट आर एब्सोल्युटली रॉन्ग, बट एट द सेम टाइम गवर्नमेंट की जरूर बात करनी चाहिए.
Sorry, Rohit, I'd like to come in and question Rinal on something here. Rinal, अगर आप ये लॉ पढ़ें, जो तीनों लॉज पास हुए हैं, अगर आप ये तीनों लॉज पढ़ें, तो आप नोटिस करेंगे कि इसमें on one of the sections it says under the new law it's not mandatory for a company to make a written contract with the farmer for any contract farming. So even if the company violates the term of the contract, the farmer cannot prove it. This is just one of the reasons on why the farm bill is controversial. आपका क्या कहना है?
मैम बिल्कुल ये ठीक बात है. अगर एक तो फार्मर जैसे आई वुड टू गिव यू एग्जांपल, पेप्सिको ने फार्मर्स पे केस किया था इन गुजरात रिगार्डिंग जो उनके पोटैटोज का था कि उनके सीक्रेट्स लीक कर दिए हैं और एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट क्लास था। बट एट द सेम टाइम द फार्मर्स वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कर भी लें या नहीं भी करें, दे आर नॉट वेल एजुकेटेड एनफ कि वो उस चीज को समझ पाए। जो 30 साल से ये हमारी मंडियां चल रही हैं, लाइक 1960-70s में, उस सिस्टम को बिल्कुल ही हटा के अगर आप एक ऐसा सिस्टम लाओगे जो एक अनपढ़ फार्मर है, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट लाइक मोर देन 50 to 60% पॉपुलेशन ऑफ इंडिया, जो कोविड के बाद या लॉकडाउन के बाद लाइक मेजॉरिटी ऑफ देम हैव अगेन वेंट टू आवर रूट, अगेन वेंट टू आवर ट्रेडिशन, फार्मिंग करने लग गए हैं। हम उनकी बात कर रहे हैं जो लेबर क्लास थी, जो पढ़ना लिखना नहीं आता है। हाउ कैन वी बिलीव कि वो इन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स को समझ पाएंगे, और कैसे हम बिलीव कर लें कि वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे कुछ भी हमसे साइन करवा सकते हैं। और ठीक है हम पढ़े लिखे हैं, लेकिन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट जो हमारे हिंडरलैंड में रहते हैं, जो हम सोच रहे हैं कि जो रिलायंस है अगर वो उठाता है क्या वो साइन करवा ले। एक अश्योरेंस गवर्नमेंट जरूर दे रही है कि हाँ ऐसा गलत नहीं होगा, बट अश्योरेंस का अगेन रिडर्सल मैकेनिज्म क्या है? इट्स लाइक सब डिविजनल मजिस्ट्रेट, कम से कम एक कोर्ट का प्रोविजन उसमें डेफिनेटली होना चाहिए। सो दिस इज व्हाट आई फील।
So, what everybody is making a statement about is that there are lots of areas that are a challenge with farming. And, we sat down as to begin understanding what really is unfolding on the ground, what needs to be changing with the Indian sector. We isolated multiple areas where there are going to be challenges, especially with this new farm bill. One of the biggest issues, the two biggest issues, and Mr. Ramaswamy talked about it, and you also mentioned about it: hoarding, corporate takeover. Two biggest challenges. Farmer holdings in this country are small. That's the third challenge area. If you have very small holdings, you can't do farming with all the tools. The government's ideas about bringing tools so that it can be more effective farming, and they could do FPOs that come together, is possibly only going to happen when these large corporates possibly come in and begin taking over and then pushing in and rentals and create a whole structure around it. Also, one of the big parts of India's revenue, the budget, goes away in funding farmers. That's what the government continuously says. And one of the reasons the government possibly is pushing this through is because it wants to wean off the farmers of the subsidies that they are provided. The subsidies anyways are wrongly structured. There is no doubt about it. The subsidy is around the idea of fertilizers, the worst thing to subsidize. What should be subsidized is great soil, or let's even not call it subsidy, let's call it award, because that's where the quality produce is going to be made. That's where the population is going to get good food. That's when we will not have these cancer trains going from Punjab to Rajasthan or Delhi. And so I think there are lots of things that are wrong with India's agriculture sector. One of the other things which is very important is you have to remember how hard the Indian farmer works. He gets out at 4:30 in the morning and wraps up only by 5:36 in the evening. Goes out every single day, lives on the edge of abject poverty. Insurance has been a big cheat structure of this whole structure. There was a Government of India insurance which went in. The Government of India insurance is the biggest cheat plan of the government with the insurance companies. Farmers do not even claim it because the money they get for insurance is so little compared to what they would have made that it should not be called insurance. What did do, it basically took that money and siphoned it off to insurance companies. Last year, insurance companies made a profit of 10,000 crores just on farm insurance. It's unbelievable that if farming insurance is going to make farming companies, the insurance companies, that much money and nothing reaches the farmers, then what was that money for? It was basically money that was siphoned off. Farmers' suicide, another big issue, and we automatically need to continue looking at it. Now, let me get back into the show here. Let's introduce Maha Mandaleshwar Prakashanandi Maharaj. He's the national president of the Sanatan Dharm Raksha Parishad. Explain to me, sir, first, you belong to a religious group. When you are appealing for this Farm Act, is there a reason that a religious body should be talking about farmers? And I'm not questioning you. I'm just trying to, help people understand why are you there protesting against the Farm Bill?
क्या है कि संत हो, किसान हो, जवान हो, व्यापारी वर्ग के लोग हों या राजनीतिक लोग हैं, किसान जब तक अन्न नहीं देगा तब तक आप जीवित नहीं रह सकते हैं। बिना जवान के कुछ दिन तो सुरक्षा देश का हो सकता है, लेकिन बिना किसान का आप कितना दिन जिंदा रह सकते हैं। इसीलिए हमारे सारे संत समाज और हमारा सनातन धर्म रक्षा परिषद पूरा यह फैसला लिया कि हम किसानों के साथ खड़े रहेंगे, जबकि हमेशा हम लोग भारतीय जनता पार्टी के साथ हमारा संगठन खड़ा रहा, हमेशा समर्थन दिया। लेकिन आज भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार, माननीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी को डायरेक्ट उस किसानों से बात करना चाहिए जो हमारे अन्नदाता हैं, जिनके बिना देश नहीं चल सकता है। सर्वप्रथम वो हैं। जब विपक्ष में होते थे तो वो कहते थे किसान किसी पार्टी का नहीं, किसी दल का नहीं, कि कोई भी हो, किसान तो किसान होता है। आज वही पार्टी, उन्हीं के नेता आज कह रहे हैं कि किसान जो है सो राजनीतिक हो गए हैं। अरे किसान के बिना तो काम नहीं चलेगा। आप एक बात समझिए कि आप हमें कुछ देना चाहते हैं, आप कह रहे हैं बहुत अच्छा चीज आप ले लीजिए, हमें नहीं चाहिए तो आप उसको वापस ले लीजिए ना। और आज सरकार कह रही है कि हम बिल ही वापस नहीं लेंगे। क्यों नहीं लेंगे? किसान को अगर नहीं चाहिए, किसान कहां जाएगा? मंडी अगर बंद हो जाएगा तो किसान अडानी के पास, अंबानी के पास जा सकेगा क्या? किसान क्या सब कोई मोबाइल यूज करता है क्या? उसको अभी पैसे की जरूरत है तो अभी अनाज बेचता है। और ऐसा नहीं कि सब किसान अनाज बेचता है, कल किसान अनाज कुछ समय के बाद खरीदता भी है। जब समय होता है तो बेच देता है, और जब उसको घट जाता है तो खरीदता भी है। तो एक समय ऐसा आएगा कि हम जो अनाज 5 रुपए में बेचे हैं वो 50 रुपए में किसान को खरीदना पड़ेगा। तो यह जो हमें नहीं चाहिए, किसानों को नहीं चाहिए, तो सरकार को इस बिल को वापस लेना चाहिए। किसान के की बात में कहते हैं हम बिल वापस नहीं लेंगे या कानून वापस नहीं लेंगे। इनको इसमें राजनीतिक रंग दिखाई देता है सरकार को। लेकिन जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट का SC ST एक्ट के विरुद्ध में आया तो सारे राजनीतिक लोग रोड पर थे। तो प्रधानमंत्री बोले हम क्या करें, सारे लोग रोड पर हैं, हमको तो इसके अगेंस्ट में अध्यादेश देगा। तो आज किसान रोड पे है, जिनको खेत में होना चाहिए। खेती का समय है, खेत सब किसान को खोज रहा है और किसान प्रदर्शन कर रहे हैं। इमीडिएटली का माहौल सरकार के, ना कि किसान को बनाना चाहिए। कृषि मंत्री कहते हैं बात करने का माहौल तो बनाए। अरे
महामंडलेश्वर जी, महामंडलेश्वर जी,
जी
महामंडलेश्वर जी, मैं थोड़ा सा ऑडियंस को एक्सप्लेन करना चाहूंगा। काफी ऑडियंस अंग्रेजी वाली भी है जो सुन रही है। आपने बहुत अच्छे रूप से बताया। What Mr. Mamandleshwar is talking about is that his grouping has always stood with the Bharatiya Janata Party all the way through. But today, they don't agree with the Bharatiya Janata Party's perspective on this. They're saying is that if the farmers are rejecting this bill and saying, please take it back, we are not interested in this bill, please talk to us, please communicate with us, and bring in a bill when it's required in the form we require it. Don't make laws without checking with us what we want it for. Then they're making a point. And so what Mr. Mahamandleshwar is talking about is, let's create a bill which really serves the purposes of the farmer. They also believe that this corporatization, which the Modi government is talking about, is going to help the farmers. But what these groupings are saying, including the farmers, is it is not going to help us. We don't think it is going to help us. It's in fact going to really, really negatively impact us. And this is something that we must carefully listen to. It's all in front of us. You've seen this happen in front of us. Is if this is going to negatively impact the farmers, then once the landscape had changed for 2-3 years, you can never go back to the old one. And I think it's going to be a different landscape. So I think India is at one of those crossroads. When India looks at this farm bill, a grouping that actually has worked with this farm bill and a grouping that doesn't work for this farm bill, which doesn't understand this farm bill, is not looking at it and saying, where do we go forward from here? Where do we take this ahead? Jessica, do you want to ask something to Mr. Mahamandleshwar? Because I think you have a perspective around this idea as well on what needs to happen, and especially a religious team that always has sat with the Bharatiya Janata Party. If they're protesting, there must be a reason.
Absolutely. If they're protesting, there must be a reason. And we've been explained as to how this is more important for people to go beyond their spiritual, religious, and political beliefs to stand with the farmers. सर, आपका जो सपोर्ट है फार्मर्स के साथ, आप उनके साथ हैं इस समय, या आप प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं? कब तक आगे जाएंगे? क्या डिमांड करते हैं गवर्नमेंट से? कब
नहीं नहीं मैं
कब आप ये
हम
प्रोटेस्ट
लोग
वापस
हम
लेंगे?
लोग हम किसान के साथ हैं और पूरा हमारा सनातन धर्म रक्षा परिषद परिवार संत समाज उनके साथ है, क्योंकि किसान के बिना किसी का काम नहीं चलेगा। जब तक अन्न नहीं होगा, आपके पास बहुत पैसे हो जाए, क्या पैसे को तो नहीं खाएंगे, सोने चांदी को तो नहीं खाएंगे, अन्न ही खाना पड़ेगा आपको। हम लोग किसान के साथ हैं और सरकार इस बात को माने कि किसान किसी राजनीतिक पार्टी का नहीं होता, उसके पास समय नहीं है, खेती करता बेचारा किसी तरह जीता है, वह आज किसान रोड पर है, तो उसकी इमीडिएटली उस बात को सरकार माने। हम लोग किसान के साथ हैं। अगर सरकार नहीं मानेगी तो बृहत आंदोलन होगा, चक्का जाम होगा, और सरकार अंतोगतवा किसान से ही बना है और किसान ही सरकार को गिरा देगा। मोदी जी इस बात को हमेशा ध्यान में रखें कि किसान गरीब मजदूर आपको वोट देके वहां भेजा है, तो उसके हित का ध्यान रखें आप, न कि अंबानी अडानी के हित का ध्यान नहीं रखें। वो लोग वोट देके सरकार नहीं बनाता है, सरकार चलाने में भले वो लोग सहयोग करते हैं कारपोरेट घराना, लेकिन बनाने का काम गरीबों का है, मजदूरों का है, किसानों का है। और सारे जो छोटे वर्ग है वह भी कहां चला जाएगा? छोटे वर्ग अगर अंबानी अडानी या बड़े बड़े कारपोरेट घना जाएंगे, तो छोटे छोटे कारपोरेट घना कहां चले जाएंगे? छोटे छोटे व्यापारी कहां चले जाएंगे? किसान कहां चले जाएंगे? तो किसान का जो हित हो, गरीबों का जो हित हो, आप तो कहते हैं मोदी जी कि हम किसानों क्या है, हम गरीबों का है, हम मजदूरों की सरकार है, तो अब कहां चली गई अभी आपकी, जब सारा किसान रास्ते पे खड़ा है, रोड पे खड़ा है, जिनको खेत में होना चाहिए था, आज खेती नहीं हो पा रही है, सारे किसान खड़े हैं, तो आप क्यों नहीं वापस है? आपकी सरकार के मंत्री आपके इस्तीफा दे रहे हैं, आप कह रहे हैं कि ठीक है हमारा बिल सही है, किसान को फायदा होगा, तो ठीक है इसको भी वापस ले लीजिए, बाद में सब किसान को इस बात को समझाइए, किसान को लगेगा कि नहीं ठीक है तो फिर लाया जा सकता है, इसके लिए क्या दिक्कत है?
So
हम किसान के साथ हमेशा खड़े।
let me slightly weigh in here. What is happening on the ground right now is the Chief Minister of Haryana, Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar, has come to Delhi to meet the center. One of the big protests is happening in Haryana because the Punjab farmers came into Haryana and they've been protesting there. There have been 100 farmers about 100 kilometers away from Delhi. They've been taken into preventive custody as we speak. Because the protest is really, really now, upstaging itself. It's kind of, come to a point where people are standing there and saying, we have to stop this. If this continues, and how long will this continue, is something that we all have to see. Let's ask Mr. Mahamandaleshwar. Mr. Mahamandaleshwar, आपका ये प्रोटेस्ट कब तक चलेगा, या ये एक दिन का
हमारा ये
प्रोटेस्ट है?
प्रोटेस्ट जब
आज
तक बिल वापस नहीं हो जाएगा, जब तक बिल वापस नहीं
खड़े
होगा,
हो पाएंगे?
हम लोग किसान के साथ खड़े। जी
खड़े हो पाएंगे?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, किसानों की बात मानना पड़ेगा, जवान और किसान से देश चलता है, और किसान की बात नहीं मानने से सरकार गिर जाएगी, प्रधानमंत्री जी की इस्तीफा देना पड़ेगा, और बिल वापस होके ही रहेगा। नहीं रहेगा तो हम लोग सारे संसद का घेराव करेंगे, संसद को अपने क्षेत्र में नहीं आने देंगे। दिल्ली में कितना दिन रहेंगे? दिल्ली से वोट थोड़ा मिलता है, क्षेत्र में जाके किसान वोट देता है। हम लोग संसद भवन का घेराव करेंगे, सारे सांसदों का घेराव करेंगे, कृषि मंत्री का घेराव करेंगे, और अंतोगतवा ये बिल को वापस लेना ही पड़ेगा। ठीक है, तो फिर इसको किसानों को समझाइए, किसानों को लगेगा कि हमारे बिल का है तो फिर लाया जाएगा। अभी तो फिलहाल इसको हम लोग मानने के लिए तैयार नहीं है, या प्रोटेस्ट चलेगा, प्रोटेस्ट बंद होने वाला नहीं है, और सरकार को मानना ही पड़ेगा, अंतोगत मानना ही पड़ेगा, उससे नीचे कोई समझौता होने वाला नहीं है।
So, just to give you a sense of how serious they are about the protest, right now there has been police which has been deployed outside the Ministry of Agriculture in Delhi. There are also around all political offices there has been police deployed. Delhi police is there. You have to remember, Delhi police belongs to the center because it is not under the control of the Delhi government, which is an Aam Aadmi Party government. So the Delhi police, when it's deployed in the center, is based on the commands of the center because it belongs to the Home Ministry. Also, one of the other things to remember is that this protest is more aggressive in states which are non-BJP ruled. I'm making this as a point. I know a lot of people will disagree with it, but that's the reality. Uttar Pradesh, farmers joined very late. The protest size is not as large in Uttar Pradesh, but it is there today. And Bihar, we've seen very little. So a lot of this protest is happening in anti-BJP states, but not all of them. Now we are beginning to see opposition parties come up in. But everybody around the BJP I've spoken to and the people who are involved on the BJP side say that these farmers are being fooled by the political parties. Now, that's something for people to realize. That's something for everybody else to understand what it is. We are not on one side or the other. We are bringing you the story the way it unfolds. Let me bring in Jaya. Jaya is an organic farmer. It's called Desi Utpad. They will work both in UP and Himachal Pradesh. Jaya, if you are on the line with us, can you tell me when you look at this
नमस्ते रोहित।
protest? नमस्ते जी, नमस्ते। जया जी, जब आप इस प्रोटेस्ट को देखती हैं, क्या आपको लगता है कि ये प्रोटेस्ट सही है, गलत है? ये सरकार सोच रही है फार्मर्स के बारे में या ये सरकार कॉर्पोरेट्स के बारे में सोच रही है?
रोहित, ये प्रोटेस्ट मेरे हिसाब से प्रोटेस्ट के रूप में नहीं, आंदोलन के रूप में नहीं होना चाहिए था, लेकिन सरकार से इस बिल के अगेंस्ट में बातचीत बहुत जरूरी है। लोग प्रैक्टिकलिटी नहीं सोच पा रहे हैं। किसान के पास समय नहीं होता है और किसान आज रोड पे बैठा हुआ है। तो आपको क्या लगता है रोहित कि किसान कितनी देर तक रोड पे बैठ पाएगा? और किसान को एक दिन, अभी खेती का टाइम है, अभी गेहूं का समय है, गेहूं में किसान लगा के तो गेहूं आ गया है और अब वो गेहूं खेत में सूख रहा है, उसे पानी की जरूरत है। तो किसान कितनी देर तक बैठ पाएगा? और किसान को एक दिन जाना पड़ेगा और गवर्नमेंट इसी के इंतजार में है कि वो जीतेंगे ही, और किसान के पास समय नहीं है कि वो आंदोलन में लगा रहे। बोल तो रहे हैं हम कि हम 6 महीने साल भर बैठेंगे, लेकिन किसान ज्यादा दिन बैठ नहीं पाएगा रोहित, और उसे वापस जाना पड़ेगा अपनी खेती के लिए।
Well, Jay is making a very, very important point, and Jessica, I'd like you to weigh in when you come in here as well. The point Jay is making: the farmer is very, very poor. He cannot afford, or she cannot afford, to be sitting on the streets and protesting. They've already planted the wheat and they have to go and put water back in. If they don't put water to the wheat right now, they will lose all the wheat. Basically, they're going to die of abject poverty if they do not make sure that they provide water to the wheat right now in the next few days. So the farmer protest is going to dissipate. Jaya is also making a point that this is why the government is, a bit more relaxed. They're saying, let's push these farmers as much as we can so that they get back to where they were, and this protest is going to get over. And so, Jessica, if you're online, do you want to ask Jaya something? I don't think Jessica is there. Let me ask Jaya ji the next question. Jaya ji, आप ये बताइए, कितने दिन आपको लगता है प्रोटेस्ट चलेगा, और अगर सरकार ने वापस नहीं लिया है ऑर्डिनेंस, क्या फार्मर्स के पास कोई चॉइस है?
कि और बहुत ज्यादा यदि किसान रोड पे वेट करेगा तो 15 से 20 दिन और वेट कर सकता है, नहीं तो उसे वापस जाना ही है, क्योंकि उसके बाद फिर भूखों मरने की नौबत आ जाएगी, कोई पैसा नहीं बचेगा। और किसी को भी, ना किसान लीडर्स को, ना गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स को, ना किसी मिनिस्टर्स को ये फर्क पड़ने वाला है कि उन्हें खाना खिलाने वाला या उनके बच्चे जो घर पे बैठे हैं उनको कौन खाना खिलाएगा। तो मुझे नहीं लगता है कि 15-20 दिन से ज्यादा या महीने से ज्यादा किसान इस चीज को कर पाएगा। और इसका मेरी तरफ से ये अपील है कि जल्दी से जल्दी बातचीत की सुनवाई करी जाए। लेकिन मुझे नहीं लगता है कि अभी जो ये सारे आज रिपोर्ट्स आ रहे हैं कि गवर्नमेंट किसी भी हालत में अपने आप को किसी भी सिचुएशन में किसानों से बातचीत करने के लिए तैयार नहीं कर पा रही।
जया जी, मैं कर्नल रोहित देव पंजाब रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी सिस्टम्स प्राइवेट लिमिटेड चलाते हैं. ही रन्स दिस कंपनी. दे आर इन्वॉल्व्ड विद द फार्मर्स. Colonel Rohit Dev, can you tell me, when you look at this protest, do you think this protest is rightly held, or does the farmer have misinformation?
Rohit, if you ask me, I think it's both ways. And I've been following this for a long time, and we interact in Punjab in a great detail. I keep getting calls from farmers as well. So I generally support two things. You have a grievance on these three bills, you must protest. But my only logical question was that this is a straight matter beyond a point. So it should have been handled a little much better, and we shouldn't have, stoked it to a level of having blockages of highways and other national requirements. But having said that, I believe what the speaker before me was saying, she is absolutely right. It's a case that beyond a particular period of time, the farmers would have to go back to their farmlands to sow for the next crop and do the needful there. And in that, it doesn't augur well for our nation also to prolong this to a level that it becomes a political fight more than a farmer's requirement. The other part is this farm bill is a very simple document, actually, these three bills. And it will be much more prudent for people to disseminate the info at the level it is required to be. The only problem I see in bigger states which are agricultural into rice only, like Punjab, is that there is a systematic flow of the food grains from the farm through the mandis to the end users. And every level, there is an ecosystem which is working. So obviously that ecosystem itself is getting questioned right now through this bill, and then that is why people are stoking all kinds of the alternatives which might come up to the market for the farmer. But I'm not too sure actually, Rohit, because how it's going to pan out. Whether one side says it's a corporate sector leaning kind of a bill, the other side says no, the fact of farmer will get benefited immensely. Keeping both sides to a side, I believe the farmer currently is a loser because he's out from his farmlands and he's out on the streets. That should not have been the case, and especially with farmers of Punjab. I can imagine for a small state which can't understand agriculture, the Punjab farmers understand what they are into, and it's the time. See, September it happened, so they had all the time for 2 months. They protested. They had some issues raised with the state government, but to leave and come to the streets, I'm not even sure how many percentage of people they are there have been waylaid. How many have actually read? Because when people sees national televisions and there are various channels at that, you find that there are enough stories to say that people don't know what they're out for. So I'm quite sure that that should not be the case. A well-informed farmer trying to negotiate with any government is a good thing to happen. It's a good thing in democracy where people come up and actually espouse their grievances to the people concerned. The government has had a spate of these talks with them. 3, 4, 5 have happened now. So they should now be in a position to enunciate and tell the country that at what stage these talks are and why do we need so many rounds hereafter. We shouldn't need actually, because the grievances are known, the solution options are there, albeit limited, and the government has to finally take a stand on the bill. So it has to be a holistic consensus of the nation, not a particular state. So if that is gelling well as per the government policy, then take a tough stand. But if it's not gelling as per your policy and you can make some mends in this current bill, then might as well go ahead and do it. And there are ways to amend the
So,
bill even through ordinance. Don't have
so
to go to
Rohit,
parliament currently. Yeah,
when the farmers met the three union ministers, the union minister
yeah,
said, we will form a committee and we will have discussions
sure.
around it. Basically, what they were trying to do, it was that they were trying to push the farmers out of this thing. They said, take down your strike. We will sit down and discuss on a table. What I did not understand, and I didn't see anybody
Yeah.
question the government of India,
See, Rohit,
is the hell,
I
what the
am too much
hell?
anti these committees at the government level. You see, we have seen so many committees
No,
for last many years.
Rohit, one second.
We have to take
Rohit,
a
let me
decision.
finish one
Yeah,
second. Rohit, let me
yeah,
finish.
sure.
What my challenge was, I said, did you not hold this committee before? These farmer
Yeah,
associations, why didn't you sit down with them before you brought in an ordinance? I'm sorry. You do not operate like that. You put out an ordinance after you've had enough reason sitting with these same
sure.
committees you're talking about. We will have these committees later. Why this
Correct.
afterthought of we'll have a committee? You should have had a committee, there is no doubt about it, but it should have been before. It should have been a long, large discussion. You're changing the landscape of something that's been followed for over 70 years. All of a sudden, you begin changing the schematics without going through proper discussion. There is no hurry in it. There needs to
Yeah,
be a good, solid discussion, take people into confidence, and ask for that discussion. I think that's what the point you're also making.
yeah.
जया जी is also online right now. जया जी, आप ज़रा बताइए कि आपको लगता है कि डिस्कशन एक बहुत आवश्यक था जब ये इनने प्लान किया. अगर ये डिस्कशन पहले किया होता तो आपको लगता है ये प्रोटेस्ट होता जिस तरीके से हुआ? I think Jayaji is not on the line. Let me go back to Rohit here. Rohit, where do we stand today? Do you think that this protest would have happened if the discussions had taken place?
See, Rohit, I'm not too sure whether it was any kind of a unilateral decision. I'm quite sure it's passed by the parliament. It is floated as a, kind of a notification or a paper to read to all the ministers. And it may be the voting pattern is such that the bill goes through. But having said that, since the deliberation is on and a period of time is given to go through those notes, I'm quite sure people were aware in the consultative manner to give that decision and take it forward. What the government probably didn't know or did know, the repercussions, because they also know that this particular law or a bill will have a XYZ effect in varying states. It can't be the similar effect of acceptance 100% by any state. So some may say 100%, some may say just zero. So the government actually should have been prepared. I'm not too sure if they are prepared, because it has taken a turn in which people have come out of the streets and they have reached as far as Delhi to block the national capital. But surely the government would have wargamed this in their mind about the impact, because I'm quite sure the bureaucrats there who are making this bill are answerable to the country, to the government. They should have thought through that what are going to be the various nuances and repercussions coming through with this passing of the bill. And the bill has been in the limelight for about three months plus. So quite surely the various state governments should have spoken up and done the needful. We shouldn't, as a democracy, reach a stage for a dharna. That's my small point. The farmer is right, but the leaders are wrong. The leaders who have instituted the bill to the people who are trying to now talk about it, somebody is not talking right, and somebody is not in the right frame to currently say a yes or no. That is my short point. We can't be waylaid by a policy just because a bureaucrat has made it and the government has put it and the other state government is not accepting it. It's a failure of the elected representatives. They have to be held accountable. The farmer cannot cry on any other shoulder. He has to cry on those representatives of the democracy. So they have failed right from state level upwards.
Correct. I'm with you, Rohit, when you say that. We're joined now by a farmer. His name is Rajinder Singh. Let's bring him on and listen to Rajinder Singh. Rajinder Singh ji, जब आप देखते हैं when you see this farm bill, what is your perspective? Do you see this is made for you or is this made against you?
No, this is not against us. This is completely in favor of the farmer, because the farmers of the Punjab, farmers of the Haryana, farmers of the Rajasthan, mostly 30 to 40%, the farmer, they did not understand what is in the bill. Correctly, they are not understand what is in the bill and what is help, what will help we can get from the policy of the government. So farmer everywhere in India, but why the Punjab, why the Haryana, why the Rajasthan, the people, they are crying mostly? Because the people
Why is that?
Because the people, the farmer of Punjab, they did not understand. Only the politicians, they are pushing them. Secondly, you are looking at the men in Nihang Sikhs, they are against the government. So again, Nihang Sikhs, they are not actually farmers. They are never in the farmer, but there is one union of the Nihang Sikhs, and they pushed by the another opposition leaders to the Delhi. So they are making critical problems to the government. So I think it's suitable for the farmers. It is not against the farmers.
So this is a point I want to talk a bit about. Now, on the one side, we've heard a lot of voices who are against the farm bill. Then there is a whole voice grouping which is for the farm bill, which talks about it. Mr. Rajinder Singh is an Indian farmer, and he's telling us that one, people have not read this bill properly. Two, this bill is supposed to help the farmer and not take away anything from them. And three, again, a point which has been made of the Nihang Sikh, the protesting groups that have been on, who are fighting the government. They don't want the government to proceed ahead with it, and it's backed by the opposition party. And these groupings of farmers have been misguided by political parties. Now, this is certainly a point we've heard. I don't know if Rohit is online. Then I would certainly like to bring Rohit on. I will also like to bring on another farmer from Punjab. His name is Guri. Once Guri joins, but Rohit, if you are online with me, can you answer to Mr. Rajinder Singh?
I have seen this government functioning as an independent citizen and observed it for the last few years now. they don't rush into a decision making either ways. I'm quite sure about that part. And one of the reasons, it could be that people think that they is to tire out the farmers. I've got a different intelligence input to say that the government is very keenly looking at the protesters, demonstrators, the lines, the pipelines, the funding lines, and the connects. And the government is going to make a real good dossier about this protest as well. That's the other side, not related directly to the farmers' requirement. So the government is deep diving into this particular protest. It is trying to take out the information, and just like you had Shaheen Bagh protest, and then you had an aftermath of the legal action, you might see that happening because the nation itself, through this government, is fed up for holding the nation to ransom. You want to protest peaceful, might as well do it that way, but you can't hold the nation to ransom, and that is what the other farmer also Rajinder brought out. If it's taking a political overtone, that's just not done, Rohit. We are living in a democracy in 21st century, and if these people who are in the polity, whether good, bad, ugly, educated, or just louts, if the louts are going to dictate to us educated people in our country what could be the recourse and course of our debates coming up in the days ahead, it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate, and lack of awareness of a bill just cannot be a cause for a protest. If that is the case, then you imagine what kind of a political, upmanship is being played unnecessarily. I'm quite sure the last meeting with Amit Shah, the Honorable Chief Minister had, he has been shown some excerpts of the dossier they are maintaining. And you have a little bit of a meltdown from the state government, as I see, for the last 4 or 5 days. So I'm quite sure that angle will also be looked into very deeply by this government. But having said that, the poor farmers on the street, so how does he go back to his farmland is the question. And
Sure.
everybody is
Sure.
invested. Yeah.
Sure. Rohit, let me bring in Mr. Prabhu Dayali, the former Secretary of the Government of India. He is a farmer himself in Rajasthan. Mr. Dayal, could you tell me, when you look at this farm bill, we had a farmer earlier who talked about that this is a good bill, it's meant for the farmers. Do you think this bill is meant for the farmers?
You see, Rohit, first of all, what was the need? I just can't understand. And there are three things which are most, worrying me and as well as the farmers. I'm just in my village, so it is very difficult to, convince the farmers that what is the need. Number one, the mandis are getting a hit from this particular. Now it has become law. If you just allow farmers to sell outside mandis within the state, intra or interstate, or anywhere you want, you just demolish the mandi structure, because mandis are surviving on the farmers' participation. They have their own taxes, revenues, their board, elected boards, and very good infrastructure. Suddenly, this is going to collapse. It may remain, but there's a great worry among the farmers. Then
So,
the
okay, sorry, go
MSP
ahead.
is minimum support price, because now farmers, they go to mandis and they sell their produce at MSP decided by the government. So that is the place where they get MSP also. Maybe 10% of their produce or 20% of produce, but that makes the market price leveled or somewhere near MSP. Number two is this contract farming is totally, out of mind of the common farmers, because they themselves cultivate their land. They're small and margin farmers, 2 acres of land, 3 acres of land. How do you have a contract with the big corporate?
Mm.
And this number three is the amendment in EC Act is again a regressive law, because the farmers, me as a farmer, I'm looking all these laws interconnected, because if you want to do something, then you have to do this and do this. So they are not in isolation. And farmers, they see a complete design in this, because you just abolish the limit of stock hoarding. You allow the supermarkets to procure, allow them for artificial price hiking, and then you trade anywhere, outside mandis.
I want to
And
stop you there,
then we make
Mr.
optimized
Dayal.
through the contract part. So all
Mr.
these are,
Dayal, I want to stop you
interconnected.
there. I think you're making a very good point. I want to highlight the point you're trying to make. Now, so far, until now, one could not hoard produce. If you hoarded produce, you were somebody who was a criminal. You would be taken to jail right away. We've seen multiple raids done for hoarding.
Yes,
So
yes.
far, until now, you couldn't hoard. But today, all of a sudden, the government says it's okay to hoard. It's okay to, run the price structure the way the corporate wants it. So the farmer is looking at it and saying, this is all interconnected and this is not how it needs to operate. So, Mr. Dayal, you obviously are looking at this and saying this whole hoarding law, which has been taken away now, is aimed at benefiting the corporates, and at the final stage, it's going to impact the consumer most deeply.
Yes, you see, I as district collector, we have implemented the EC Act and Section 3 and others. You have a list of commodities notified as the essential commodities. Now suddenly you take away cereals, you take away onions, you take away potatoes, you take away all the farm produce, specifically cereals, pulses, oil seeds, which covers mustard, everything. Pulses cover all the pulses. Cereals covers every food grain, and then the horticultural produce, onions and potatoes. Suddenly take away these big commodities out of the EC Act. Don't you think these are not essential commodities? These are the basic commodities on which we survive. And then the supermarkets or any company can hoard it. There is no limit. The stock limit has been taken away. What are the then we see the interconnection in these three things. You control contract farming, you control the produce, you control the marketing, and then you bring it to the then sell it at the higher prices, taking away from the farmer and then hoarding and then selling it to the same community or maybe the consumers at large. So who is benefiting? It's very, 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 very obvious. At least farmer is not going to benefit. That is my.
Mr. Dayal was in the government of India. He was a Secretary of Defense, and he understands how it functions from inside. He's seen it unfold, how it unfolds. He's also been very active in politics now, and he's a farmer on the ground. He's not somebody who's from the outside. He understands how it functions. Mrinal, let me bring you in. Mr. Dayal, please stay with us. Rohit, please stay with us. Mrinal, let me bring you in. When you see, a
May I,
diversity of view, sure, Mr. Dayal, go ahead, make that point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. This is about the law and and on ground I have seen even after coming these laws September, the prices of food and it has crashed. I have sold my bajra in mandi for 200 rupees a quintal, which last year I sold for 900 rupees a quintal. Wheat, I have
Sorry,
to
what did you sell it
at
for this year? You sold it for 900 last year. What did you sell it this year at?
1900, 1900.
1900.
It has come down 1200, 1300. I sold my wheat at the price between 1500 to 1600, depending on the quality of wheat. Last year, the same wheat went for 2000 rupees a quintal. Now, Joe, barley, I sold it for 1700 last year, 1700. This year, it went for 1000, 1300 something. So, these prices have already crashed because of these, people have come to know that some new law is coming and, farmers can't hold it for long. And
Mr.
this is
Dayal is
already
absolutely
going to
right.
impact. So rather than
Mr. Dayal,
dumping
your
it to
connection's
farmers,
a little. Mr. Dayal, your
yep.
connection's a bit weak, so I'm going to stop you there right now until your connection stabilizes. It's true that there has been a hit when it comes what the prices in the super has been. The prices in the supermarket have been impacted. Even for basmati rice, they were impacted. So when we actually begin seeing how some of the prices have been impacted. There are farmers on the ground who are talking about it. I was in Uttar Pradesh a few weeks ago. I went out with a farmer. He sold this year for about 30% less what he sold last year. Now, Mrinal, let me bring you in here. Mrinal, tell me, when you hear all these farmers, we heard some pro voices for the bill as well. There was a Rajinder Singh who said people have not understood the bill, while there are other people who obviously have, most of the people have said they are against the bill. Explain to me, is this something that when you look at it, do you still have a say? Are you still on that? Are you a fence sitter, or do you believe that this law is not being executed properly?
So basically, this law has come up with just one notion that farmers will get more avenues to sell. He can sell in mandis, he can sell to producers. But the thing remains that who will keep the check and balances? Like they also said, कि उनका proper उनको भाव नहीं मिला. And you yourself, Rohit ji, said when you went to UP, farmers were selling at 30% less. So who is actually keeping the check on it? Moreover, like precisely, like I was at the border and we had a word with a couple of farmers. Like Reliance have had a deal with Future Group and they have more than 3,000 retail stores. So what if tomorrow they procure all the onions and all the essentials since there is an amendment Essential Commodities Act and they store and force the consumers to come at their retail stores? It will not only impact farmers but also the consumers. They can actually decide the prices at their whims and fancies if this CS Act, like the way it has amended. So the way to forward, what I feel, it certainly talks, and it as that Jayaji said, the farmers have to look after their wheat crops also. They have to like water it, they have to look after it, and they cannot sit like for more than 20-25 days. So the government should have some humanity in it, should come forward, offer talks in the favor of farmers because they are the ones who actually produce food. And as I always say, you can know your like doctor, but for a farmer, you eat 3 times a day on the meal, and there has to be a concept of a family farmer. So what I feel that there should be talks. The violent protest, of course, is wrong, but the talks need to begin quite fast. And yes, there is a failure of the elected government, as sir said, because the democracy doesn't work like this. You have to
Okay.
inculcate all parties. Rohit.
Okay. Let me bring in Jaya ji here. Jaya ji, आपने सुना मिस्टर दयाल को बोलते हुए कि ये जो पूरा प्रोसेस है फार्मर्स के खिलाफ है एक तरीके से, पर ऊपर राजिंदर सिंह जी भी हैं. राजिंदर सिंह जी को भी लाइए स्क्रीन पर. राजिंदर सिंह जी बोल रहे हैं कि लोगों ने ठीक से बिल पढ़ा नहीं है. जया जी, सबसे पहले आप बताइए, आप किस तरफ हैं? अगर अगर फार्मर्स जो इतने एक्सपीरियंस फार्मर्स हैं पंजाब के, अगर उनने ठीक से ये पढ़ा नहीं है तो एक क्या सारे लोग मिसगाइडेड हैं? दूसरा, एक और बात जो राजिंदर सिंह जी ने बोली कि एक तरीके से वो निहंग सिख पुष्ट ग्रुप्स हैं. आप इस बात से कितनी सहमत है? और राजेंद्र जी, आप उसके बाद जरा बताइएगा कि आप क्यों ये बिलीव करते हैं कि ये सिर्फ निहंग सिख का ग्रुप्स हैं. कर्नाटका के फार्मर्स, तमिलनाडु के फार्मर्स भी अब शायद पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के साथ जुड़ के अब आगे आए हैं. जय जी, पहले आप बताइए.
रोहित, बहुत टेक्निकल नॉलेज तो मुझे नहीं है, लेकिन मैंने जो समझा है इस बिल को, मैं आपको कुछ एग्जाम्पल बताना चाह रही हूँ कि गवर्नमेंट ने प्राइस फिक्स कर दिए हैं. मैं एक एग्जाम्पल आपको पैडी का ले रही हूँ कि 1850 रुपीज पर क्विंटल उन्होंने फिक्स किया. फिर वहां मैं अगेन कहना चाहती हूँ कि फार्मर के पास टाइम नहीं होता है. गवर्नमेंट जी ने जब 2 ऑफिशियल्स बिठाए कि आके वो खरीद करेंगे, और मैंने अपनी आंखों से देखा है कि बाहर जहाँ पे जो इन्होंने जगह बनाई कि वहां पे पैडी को देना है और खरीद होगी, वहां पे करीब 1500 से 2000 ट्रैक्टर्स खड़े हैं सामान लेके, और जो किसान का नंबर आएगा वो 5वें या 6ठे दिन पे नंबर आ रहा है. और वहां पर क्या हो रहा है कि बाहर किसान के पास समय नहीं है कि वो 6 दिन वहां ठंड में या बैठे या वो बिक्री करे, अपने ट्रैक्टर पे सोए, और वो फिर आधे दामों पे 1000 रुपए या 1100 रुपए के पे अपना पैडी बाहर बेच रहे हैं, और वो चले जा रहे हैं क्योंकि उनको अपना प्रोड्यूस खत्म करना है, उनको पैसे चाहिए, और फिर वही 1850 रुपए में कोई बेच रहा है। तो ये गवर्नमेंट जो फिक्स, इसको कौन देखेगा? कौन आएगा उसे बताने के लिए कि बाहर किसानों के साथ क्या हो रहा है?
Rajinder,
तो
are
इसीलिए
you aligned with what Jayaji is saying? Jayaji, let him respond, because he is possibly the only pro farm bill voice, and I want to make sure that I give him some time to speak. Mr. Rajinder Singh, do you disagree with this whole structure that there is a lot of corruption which is ongoing with this, the way the mandis work?
I am completely agree with the corruption in Mandi. I also go to sell my coconut, groundnut. So I went to near Mandi, but there was a very huge queue. I came back and sell to the local market. And local market people, we can say RC, we can say purchasers, they all also they put very low price. They buy very low price, and the same thing they store it and sell to the government, and they can give some tips to the government people who are the in charge of the buying things. So I am
So
agree
if the
that they are very
government, Mr. Rajinder Singh,
corruption.
if the government is so corrupt, which we know it
Yes,
is,
sir.
there is no doubt about that, then how do you place your trust on the government which is making a decision that this farm bill is good?
No, we can go through the points. We can see the points that is good. Before in Haryana, chana, we can't sell to the chana to the Haryana. On the border there is some tax and there is limitations. But the people uh, they 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 buy grain chana from us and they can sell to the Haryana. So why not the farmers sell to to the Haryana? So
So, and Mr. Singh, you're making a point. Let me explain that to the audience. So, what this government has done, it has taken away the barriers of the states. And those are positive changes that we see on the ground, that there are barriers of the states are removed. You can go out and take your produce anywhere in the country, sell it to whoever. But the challenge, Mr. Rajinder is an educated farmer. But the challenge with the rest of the farmers is they're very small holding farmers. The idea of them being able to approach, and that's the point Mr. Dayal was making. Let's go back to Mr. Dayal. Do you think, Mr. Dayal, the farmer in India can actually benefit from this whole open structure of selling, or will they then again become part of one large company which comes and abuses them and takes over?
Rohit, I have never sold my produce beyond tehsil level, which is within 20 or 15 kilometers. You see, there's a enormous transport cost जो अपन ले जाते हैं गाड़ी लेके ट्रैक्टर करेंगे. If you go outside, you can't go in tractor because I have a tractor in my village, so many tractors. I can hire tractors, I can hire जुगाड़. आप जानते हैं राजस्थान में जुगाड़ होता है, उसमें रख के ले जाते हैं. थोड़ा बहुत तो कोई अपने पिकअप में ले जाता है, कोई अपनी जीप में डाल लेता है, कोई वैन में डाल लेता है. छोटे छोटे किसान आप जाके मंडी में देखिए, 2-2 क्विंटल की ढेरी लगे होंगी. You see, the transport cost is enormous. If I take one vehicle from my village to my mandi, it takes 1500 rupees. 1500 तो मेरा किराया लग गया. अब मैं हरियाणा में जाके बेचूंगा तो मेरा तो किराया ही 10,000 रुपये हो जाएगा, मेरा प्रोड्यूस 5,000 का है. इसी ये बहुत ही अनप्रैक्टिकल चीज़ है, व्यवहारिक चीज़ है कि मैं यूपी में या वहाँ बिहार में ले जाके बेचूंगा. ठीक है, मेरे गेहूँ का आप 1 लाख रुपये कुंटल दाम दे दो, मैं भेज दूंगा अमेरिका. इसी ऐसी बातें करना जो किसानों को समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं, वो करें कि हम कहीं जाके बेच देंगे. तो मेरे तो ये बात समझ में आती नहीं. हाँ, मुझे बहुत ऊंची कीमत मिलेगी तो मैं कहीं भी जाके बेचूंगा, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है, लेकिन वो प्रैक्टिकली नहीं है. 10 तरह के उत्पाद होते हैं, एक ही खेत में 2 तरह की क्वालिटी होती है. इफ यू गो आउटसाइड, आई डोंट नो व्हाट काइंड ऑफ क्वालिटी बेंचमार्क दे विल हैव, कि ये जो छोटा है, पतला है, ये काला हो गया, ये ऐसा हो गया, ये मूंगफली छोटी है, पतली है ना. लोकल मंडी में एक भाव तय हो जाता है. मे बी वहाँ थोड़ा बहुत
Mr. Dayal,
करते हैं, बट that is the best place to sell my produce, and immediately I
Sure,
get the money.
sure.
Immediate.
So one of the
MS
things that
maybe
the
I
world
have
has been
to have.
doing, Mr. Dayal, one of the things the world has been doing is saying, let's not make produce travel. Let's concentrate on local, which means produce should not travel too much because it adds carbon footprint. The idea is consume local, produce the goods locally, and that's possibly the best way for the environment forward as well.
देखिए
But this government
मैं
obviously,
जयपुर से दिल्ली, may I complete? Even if
yes,
I take
please.
my produce from my place to Delhi, there are 6 points I have to pay toll, which is more than 2,000 rupees. You see, and the transport cost and sending 2 men along, and then whom do I sell in Delhi? If I wait for 3 days there, you can see my transaction cost there. Where do my people stay? How do they sell? This is just not practical. It has to be within tehsil level or block level. Beyond that, if you ask farmer to take his produce, someone else can take, someone else can buy and take and sell it higher price. But farmer can't afford to take his produce to far-flung area places. It is just not possible. It
Uh,
is मेरी समझ से मैं समझ
let
चुका हूँ, मैं
me,
क्योंकि
sure,
गवर्नमेंट में
understood.
भी रहा हूँ.
Understood, Mr. There. Understood. Let me bring in Renal here. Renal, you are somebody who's producing organic. And when you look at, them talking about selling produce from one place to the other, and we're going to be an international little of this country, and the rest of the world is talking about, local, go as local as possible. What is your perspective on this? There are two different farmers who've spoken about it.
No, basically, I totally agree with Dayal sir. And even in Ayurveda, like Jaya ma'am has talked a lot about like Ayurvedic medicines and everything. And she always talks about like always consume local and always consume seasonal. So that means whatsoever the surrounding areas are, whatever we can grow in surrounding area, that should come in the cities. And again, they also said the practical problem, which is like if you take your stuff from Rajasthan to Delhi or Rajasthan to Punjab or Haryana or whatever, there's logistics cost involved in it, which of course the government doesn't pay. Yes, there are panchayat houses which do facilitate transportation, but that's not enough for all the farmers. So there's a huge logistics cost which is technically not viable. And the cost of the produce, the quality standards, it absolutely cannot match with what we are selling outside. So the scenario in which we sell in the mandis or in the local market, that's much more viable from farmers' perspective rather than from a corporate structure. So, and again, as I said before, like who will keep a check on the corporate? Like, fine, they can do a deal, they can do a contract that we will take this particular quality. And what if the quality doesn't favor their quality standards? Where will the farmer take the degraded quality? क्योंकि उसको तो सारा सामान बेचना है. A grade quality, fine, but what about B grade, C grade, and D grade qualities? सो मंडी प्रोवाइड स्ट्रक्चर कि आपका जो बेस्ट प्रोड्यूस है वो आप इसमें बेच दीजिए, जो बाकी है वो आप बाकी जगह बेच सकते हैं. सो इन दिस आई टोटली एग्री विद दयाल सर एंड राजेंद्र सर. द पॉइंट इज गुड कि फार्मर्स को एक लाइक जगह मिल रही है कि आप अंदर भी बेच सकते हैं, बाहर भी बेच सकते हैं. बट अगेन ओवर द ईयर्स अगर मंडी खत्म हो जाएगी तो इट वुड रियली रियली डिग्रेड like the standards of selling or marketing. So the thought process is good, but the implementation is I don't think उसको proper implement कर पाएंगे वो.
But
रोहित sir.
one thing which I want to talk about here, what I did not understand from this government's decision is why couldn't the mandis exist and the corporates exist side by side? Whoever would have given the higher value, the farmer would have gone there. Why remove one to bring the other? Why can't all of them coexist? They should have said you don't need to just sell local. You can sell wherever you want. You can sell to a corporate. A corporate can come and pay you more. But why remove the mandis out of the whole structure? I didn't understand that. And so, Mr. Rajinder, if you can tell me, when you look at it, why do you think it was essential to remove one to bring the other? Why couldn't have one more corporate group brought in and say, buy if you can?
I think it's better that we can have two options only, or mandi should be against as the other corporate also. तो मंडी होना चाहिए और कॉर्पोरेट भी हो चाहिए, तो फार्मर को दो ऑप्शन मिलेंगे, तो
करेक्ट,
इसलिए ठीक
वही
है।
मैं सोच रहा था कि
हाँ
ये क्यों नहीं दोनों क्यों नहीं ऑप्शन,
हाँ
दो तीन जितने मर्जी ऑप्शन
हाँ,
उतना अच्छा है, अगर हो
उतना अच्छा सर,
कम क्यों
उतना
ऑप्शन।
अच्छा। हाँ अच्छा, मैं हरियाणा का तो मैं इसलिए एग्जांपल दिया कि नौहर हमारा हनुमानगढ़ डिस्ट्रिक्ट के अंदर नौहर है, और इलाहाबाद उससे जस्ट 15 किलोमीटर दूर है। तो और इलाहाबाद आधा हरियाणा में, आधा राजस्थान के अंदर है। तो 15 किलोमीटर किसान वहां ट्रांसपोर्ट करके जा सकता है हरियाणा में, चने के भाव वहां ज्यादा है। मैं ये ज्यादा डिस्टेंस की बात नहीं कर रहा कि जहां से कोई आप 150-200 किलोमीटर
जी
दूर हो। तो
जी
शॉर्ट
जी,
डिस्टेंस में आप दूसरे स्टेट में जहाँ के भाव अच्छा हो, वहां वो क्यों नहीं जा सकता? वो
श्योर
ट्रांसपोर्ट
बिल्कुल,
उसका
नहीं नहीं,
हो।
आपकी बात
हाँ,
बिल्कुल सही है। पर राजेंद्र सिंह
जी
जी, जो हम पॉइंट हम बना रहे हैं कि अब जो आप बोल रहे हैं, पहले आपने बोला कि आप फार्म बिल समझते हैं कि अच्छा था, पर अगर आप अब बोल रहे हैं कि फार्मर की चॉइसेस कम होती हैं और आप इससे सहमत हैं कि ये फार्म बिल अलाइंड नहीं है, फार्मर्स के हित में नहीं है कुछ लेवल पे, तो आप किस तरफ हैं? आपको लग रहा है हित में है या नहीं है?
मेरे को तो लग रहा है ये फार्मर बिल हित के अंदर है, अगर फार्मर उसको पूरी तरह से स्टडी करे तो, पूरे पॉइंट देखे तो।
और
और
मंडी को ना हटाना, गो अहेड मिस्टर दयाल, यू, आई नो यू वांट टू रिस्पॉन्ड, प्लीज एक
नहीं
सेकंड
नहीं,
राजेंद्र
मंडी
ये
मंडी भी
रोहित,
मंडी भी नहीं हटनी चाहिए, मंडी भी वहां रहनी चाहिए ताकि फार्मर को दो ऑप्शन मिल
जी।
सके और दोनों
Okay,
में
Mr.
कंपटीशन
Dayal,
होती है।
go ahead.
तो
Mr. Dayal, go ahead. Wait a second, Rajinder ji. Mr.
Rohit,
Dayal wants to respond to you.
I want to just say few things, because at present also nobody is stopping me and the farmers in my area to take their produce outside the state. We grow tomato, lot of tomatoes in Bassi. The farmers, they take their produce to Azadpur Mandi in Delhi. Nobody stops them. I grow groundnut. I take this groundnut to Jaipur or the nearby Chakshu or Bassi or any mandi I want to sell if I get higher prices. Wheat, I some farmers, they take the wheat in their tractor, come to Jaipur and directly they are selling to the consumers. Nobody is stopping them. So what is the need and what is the good thing in these laws? That is already there. The only worry is that the mandis are taking a hit. Minimum support price is not being talked about. MSP, above MSP, if somebody can take guarantee, then there is no problem. But as I told you, 30% price gir gayi hai. We have already taken 30% hit. I
Right.
don't know how it go. I heard
It
that
is
in
one of the most
Bihar people are
important
selling
points.
at 500 rupees a quintal. So I don't know how much
Yeah, it
hit
is.
the farmer will take.
It's a very
That
good
is the,
point, and I want to go back to it, Mr. Dayal. I think I want to extrapolate that point a little more. The minimum support price is what the farmer is saying you must maintain. The minimum support price structure has to be improved. The corruption from the government has to go down there, because what was happening is the MSP is not honored. MSP only works for the corrupt. Some groupings in between will take that MSP, mess the farmer up, buy the produce cheaper, and take it to the mandis to the for getting the MSP, because it only takes contacts and political connections to get your produce, or stand in line for 6 days outside these offices. Otherwise, you're not going to get a chance. So there has been tremendous amount of corruption around there. The government should have focused on that and finished that first before clearing a farm bill that's not going to work for the farmer, which the farmer is not happy about. I'm going to now go towards a close for this show. I want to thank Mr. Prabhu Dayal for coming on the show. I want to thank Rajinder Singh ji for coming on the show. Jaya ji, Mrinal, I think Rohit. It is a very important part of our structure. I want to go back and talk. Actually, I have another farmer who has joined us just now. Guri is based in Punjab. Guri, I'm going to let you weigh in. I've just seen you now. Apologies. Guri, what are the farmers in Punjab today saying? We've heard a lot of issues. I'll raise some of the issues for you. One is the MSP issue, which many of the people talked about. The second issue one farmer raised is this is the Nihang Sikh, which has nothing to do with farming. And we've heard this bit that this is the Khalistan movement at some level, which is trying to do this whole, bring this chaos around, and it's supported by the political party. First of all, I want you to respond to that comment.
Can you repeat the last line? I think you broke off there for a second.
Guri, the question is that this protest is being organized by the Nihang Sikhs, and they have nothing to do. You are in Punjab, you're in Patiala, and they have nothing to do with the farmers. They, in fact, are a politically motivated group. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, well, first of all, yeah, thanks for asking that question. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. That this current government is trying to connect what's going on here in the country with terrorism, extremism, and such as a Khalistani movement. A Nihang Sikh. This is not a religious movement. This is a movement of the farmers in India. And all of those hundreds and thousands of people, possibly millions of people right now that are lined up at the Delhi border are all farmers. They're farmers from Punjab. Punjabis took the initiative and they marched out there, but now they're joined today with Rajasthanis and Haryanvis and other states of the nation. So that argument that the Nihang Sikhs have nothing to do with this movement, aside from this being a religious, them having a religious agenda, is just false. Because Nihang Sikhs, they farm as well. Their only agenda is not to go and promote their religion. I mean, I'm sorry, their agenda at all is not to promote their religion. The agenda that they have is to protect the rights of the farmers, and not just of Punjab, but of all of India.
What is the Kasan movement about, Guri? Tell me a bit about the Kasan movement.
Well, what I feel is basically the Kisans of Punjab, they feel that the government is going to do a bait and switch. I've been reading up quite a bit about these bills, and what my understanding is that they feel that they're not going to have their blanket of protection is going to be taken away. Initially, everything will be fine and dandy and fruitful, but once they get used to a certain way of conducting their day-to-day operations, things will change. And particularly, one of the biggest issues right now, which the small farmer, the biggest concerns that they have with this is that they don't have the capacity to store anything. So I guess with the process of this chain, the way things are going to take place, they won't be their crops will be sold at a very low rate because they won't have the ability to store anything.
Right. So, Guri, I think the challenge that we see ahead is these farmer protests is going to continue going on. Now, many have talked about the farmers will not be able to hold up. They will have to go back. Many of them live in abject poverty. The farmers in Punjab are slightly more progressive, if I want to call it that, because they've always run it like an industry. It's a good thing and a bad thing. There's a challenge around it, but because the farmers are a little more solid on how they function, they may be able to still hold up. They put in a lot of hard work as well. Let me not take that away. They put in a tremendous amount of effort and time. It's a lot of hard work working on a farm. So thank you, Guri, for joining me. I want to go back to why we decided to do this show. What are the issues that we looked at as we talked about this show? Because it's very important to go beyond what India is. India has massive issues around pesticide use, groundwater, soil quality, genetically modified crops. And we must address all of these as we talk about farmers. The good part is this protest has brought the focus of this country, India, on the farmers. It is an important part of our existence. 60-70% of India lives in rural India, and many of them are farmers. If you can't feed you can't help the hand that feeds you, then you do not understand how a nation functions. The person who protects you and the person who feeds you, two people must always be at the center of your plan and strategy. And if that is something that is not being understood, if that's the person that you're not communicating with, then you're missing a big point. So I think as we end this farmer protest show today, I want to talk about the focus of this show is farmers and not just the protest itself. The protest shows the problems on the ground. And thank you, viewers, for joining us. We'll continue balanced, uninterrupted coverage. I know Rohit has raised his hand. Rohit, do you want to do something? Do you want to say something? And then
just
I'm
30
happy
seconds,
to close. Sure.
Just
Sure.
30 seconds, Rohit. The
Sure.
problems enunciated by Guri and Mr. Dayal and people are very valid points. But you must understand, in a country like ours, these problems are still today. So you can't attribute these problems to the future that this is going to remain. So it is a problem at hand. So you have to see a vision of next 20, 30 years where you are seeing cold chains operating. You are seeing, instead of a push model that the farmer is going with his cart outside, there's a pull model to take it out. So all these changes take time. I've been in the logistics world as well while in the army. I understand both the concepts. And I'm quite sure a change is going to come. And if Guri can pardon my saying, if you see the pull a Walmart puts, it's not even base continental US. It is trans world. So that is the kind of logistics which will come up eventually. Whether it's a corporate sector or the mandi or a mix is a different debate altogether. And you won't be surprised tomorrow, because a Walmart can't come and take your crops. A person who's only producing 5 kgs will 100% sell to the local market. It is not going to change. So you have
Rohit,
to see
but you
the
have to
future
remember,
and unit first. Right.
Rohit, you have to remember that India failed Walmart.
I understand that.
Walmart could not exist here
because they couldn't understand.
Because no, they understood the political will around corrupt politicians and bureaucrats.
That's the main point, the
pushed
corruption part.
Walmart out. They
Agree
pushed
with you.
Walmart out, and they will continue pushing these people out. And that is what the people are protesting against. They're saying, don't just favor only a couple of corporates. Open the market properly. Keep the mandis. Keep the markets open. You must expand it rather than shrinking.
100%.
You must shrinking the market. So I want to go back to that point. We are going to continue focusing on the farmers. It's a very important part of our existence. And we will continue following the story in India on farmers. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. We have no time left.
Thank you.
But thanks a lot.
Godspeed.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay.